Hello, welcome to Book Talk. I'm your host, Anthony Moirore. At Book Talk, we get to have an author come and tell us about his book or her book. And today, we have a great guest with us, a guest who's traveled continents. And when you travel from one continent to the other, you get to go through some encounters. And not only that, when you travel in life, you meet with encounters. And the guest is going to tell us about herself and her encounters. And I'm excited to have her in our show. And without taking one more time, I'm going to invite Nadine Thompson into the show. And I hope I got that right.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm well. Welcome to the show. We are honored to have you here.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Yes, and before we go on, we'd like to have a clue of yourself. Where are you from, and what do you do? Give us a glimpse of yourself.
Okay, so I'm originally from Jamaica. I
Hmm.
was born in a small village in Jamaica. I grew up with parents who were farmers and they're, people who are close to the soil. I am a teacher also. So I graduated from university in Jamaica and I was teaching there for for some time. Then I went to Japan as a teacher as well. So I was on what is called the JET program. So JET is the Japan Exchange Teaching Program, and it take teachers from a lot of countries around the world. And so I went to Japan in 2006, and I was teaching in Japan, and I was there for 5 years. Then after that, I went to England and I studied there for 2 years, did my master's degree. And then I wanted to continue teaching. And so I decided to come back to Asia. And then I came to China. So now I'm living in China.
Whoa,
Yes.
that's
So
beautiful.
I'm a teacher and I'm also a writer.
Wow,
Right.
that's quite a journey. I mean, I thought you. No, when I saw your story, I thought you were from one continent to the other. Now I hear you are through continents.
Yes.
That's quite a
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah.
And I believe in your growing up and in your moving from one place to the other, you've had some great experiences, like and even going from one culture into the next culture. You must
Mhm.
be experiencing a lot. I love that.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
Because when I never thought I would leave Jamaica. I never had that thought in my head. So the opportunity presented itself, and then I took the opportunity, and then from there, other opportunities opened up. So that's how it started. So it wasn't like, okay, I planned this. It's just like how how it worked itself out. My book Encounters. So this is mostly just poems
Mm.
because I'm now trying to write the story form of it. So I had these poems over time. So when I was in Japan, I was writing some poems about, especially how you feel when you're in a place. So my book starts with encounters with places, then encounters with love and loss, encounters with spiritual light, and so different things. So I wanted to say that encounters just don't mean, one kind of encounter. It's different types of encounters that you can have. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I love when you mentioned that an opportunity presented itself and you took it because we all go through life encountering a lot of things, and when we have an opportunity, some of us hesitate, which we
Yes.
shouldn't be. And you grabbed an opportunity, and you are. We can tell even from this instance that you are enjoying the experiences you are having.
Well, it's been a journey. There have been many situations. There have
Mhm.
been good times, there have been bad times, but I can say that I've grown through all of the experiences. I've grown a
Mm.
lot in understanding different people, different cultures. Yes.
Okay, so is Encounters your first book? Oh, and the only
Yes,
book so far.
yes. My only book so far. So now I'm writing a non-fiction book. Now I'm writing my second book. So this was my first book. Yes.
Okay. When did you write it?
So this book was published January 2021. So during the pandemic, the first outbreak in China, it was the first lockdown, and I was at home for the first time, and I started to think, this was my dream. I always wanted to write a book, and I had some poems from before, and so I started putting things together. And as I was doing that, I saw something came up on a website I was on that this publishing house wanted some manuscripts. So I said, okay, let me see, and then they liked it, and so it was published by this company, EBL Books.
Hmm.
So yeah, so 2021 during the pandemic was when I finally decided and finally put something out there.
Now, this is beautiful. And I'm
Mm,
always encouraged by this. Now, from what I experience and encounter with several of the guests that come here,
yeah.
I'm always hearing of some good story of things happening in the last 2 years. We all know what we went through in the past
Hmm.
2 years. And when I hear that someone came out with a good story from the
Hmm.
pandemic, now that's encouraging and it's
Yeah.
inspiring and
Mhm.
enlightening.
Yeah.
So we are happy that you came up with the encounters and give us the poems that you're going to give us. Although we may not get to hear all of them because we should go and get the book and read it. But
Yeah.
so you decided to write the book and you moved into it, and
Yeah.
you now have it, and you have it on Amazon, and you have some I mean, hard copies, I guess, with you.
I had like 50 copies. That's because the publishers did 50 copies that I could have. And I did a small book launch. So my background you see here was what I was from my launch. So I did a small book launch here with some friends, and I basically sold those copies. So now I don't have any. I think I have one copy that I'm saving. So I don't have any more copies. But it's on Amazon, and people in other parts of the world have bought it. Yeah.
Mm,
Mhm.
wonderful. So I'm curious, what are some of the encounters in there?
Okay, so the first part, so this is the book, this is what it looks like. And
Hmm.
the cover was selected by the publishing house because this is actually a place in Japan, in Tokyo. So the first poem in the book is talking about Japan for jets. And as I said, jets mean the Japan Exchange Teaching Program. So I wrote a poem to talk about what was my experience on that program. What was it like to be there and my so I just read the last part for you. So it says, this experience of exchange, a lasting monument locked up in time, recording our histories, celebrating our victories, sealing our alliances, creating new perspectives, linking our destinies. So
Mm,
that was what it was like for us that after living there, we were connected in some ways and we had victories, we had histories, alliances, new perspectives, and then creating new destinies. Yeah.
mm,
Then the next point was about my travels because while I was there and also here, I visited other countries. So I've been to London and been to Paris and all these other places. So I just wrote a poem just saying how I felt as I was in these places, that each place had a different feel. When you go to a place, it has different smell, different sound, different, just something about the place you could know that is so different. So yeah, so my second poem was about that.
mm,
And I have one poem dedicated to Jamaica. I call it Landscape One, because that was my first country, first place, and my first landscape. So that poem about Jamaica. So yeah, so that was the first part. And the second part is a lot of poems about um, love and things that happened. And I wrote a poem called I'm a Woman Rising. because that this was now from all my experiences, all my situations. So that's one I can share as well.
Yeah, we'll be glad to hear
Okay.
that.
So this one is called I Am a Woman Rising. I am a woman rising, rising from disappointment, rising from loss, rising from despair, rising from unbelief, rising from emptiness, rising from negativity, rising from fear. I am a woman rising up. I am a woman accepting blessings. I'm a woman finding happiness. I am a woman experiencing hope. I'm a woman filled with abundance. I am a woman abounding in positive light. I am a woman rising higher and higher.
Whoa,
Yeah,
that's
so
that's
that was,
beautiful. That's
yeah.
beautiful. And you know why I say beautiful? Because as I mentioned before, not only in the pandemic, but in other experiences that we have in life, you are always meeting with people who are complaining, and
Mm,
they are they don't have a positive thing to say about their life, the experiences that
mm,
they are going through, and you remind us that that thing that we should hold in ourselves, because here we are not only addressing the women, but we are addressing anybody who is listening.
anybody.
But we are going to take your example, because you're a lady who has authored the book.
Mm,
So to remind ourselves that we should view ourselves in the positive, not in the negative, not
yeah.
being on downtrodden, not experiencing the hurts and worries of life, but
Mm,
encouraging ourselves that I am rising.
yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it. Mhm.
So yeah, so that was those were some of them, and then the next poem, the next section, I call it Love and Loss, and these are poems about, and, living abroad is actually what I call transient life. So you sometimes meet people and then relationships end and then people go to different places and there's always movement and you don't feel like you are staying for a long time. So some of these poems look at this kind of life, how you feel. So people
Mhm.
who read it have said to me they have really felt the sadness and they also understand that this is part of the journey. This is part of transient life. Yep.
Mm.
So I've done a few of them,
Mhm.
and also talk about love in positive light. So not only negative but also positive light. So I have a poem called A Word Like Love, saying what love is, not in the television sense, but what love is, and all of that,
Mhm.
and happiness, things like that. So both looking at negative and positive sides of love.
So, what is love? Let's hear that.
Okay. It's quite a long one, but yeah. So, a word like love. Love is asking and caring about the response. It's making sure you're comfortable and warm, caressed with warmth through hot beverages when you're sick. It's making sure you leave home suitably attired and well fed. It's checking to make sure you have the important things for your journey. Through checklists that you have covered all your bases. In days of hurt and injury, disappointments and failure, it provides a place for sleep and respite, tenderness and hope. Gathering up your loneliness, bonding through experience. A word like love is woven in a quilt, embroidered in golden moments, knitted in scarves, sewn in hemlines. A word like love seeks to find you when you've been in exile, traumatized by pain, slept in a hard place, felt forsaken, broken down in tears. A word like love says it is well, both now and then, sending signals connecting through threads spread across oceans and continents. Heard through codes, messages so clear, a word like love settles between us, transcending through this life and the next, repealing sorrow, preserving joy. Like a family photo on a mantelpiece, a word like love fades in color, the captured moments etched in time.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So
Ah,
that is
yeah.
love from a different, not just but every season, every part of it.
Yeah,
how love really is there. Yeah.
that's beautiful. And I would like to address those people who are watching us and those who get to watch this show after we are through. If you've just come in, we are talking about the book Encounters by Nadine Thompson. And there are poems, and they address they are a compilation of poems about daily life encounters and the psychological and social effects that they have on the individual. That's what Nadine says. And you should
Mhm.
go and get a copy of it and then experience the beautiful poems that she's shared with us, some of them. And yes, if you have not had a chance to watch our other episodes, those of you who are listening, go to any platform that is hosting podcast and Apple Podcast, Audible, iTunes, and search for Book Talk at Book Place, and you'll get to hear them. And so let's continue with the interview with Nadine. Now, you started with Japan, but you're from Jamaica. Although you've mentioned about Jamaica, do you share some encounters of when you were very young and growing up?
I know because this was on my journey. So I wrote one poem about Jamaica that I will read. So
Okay,
because this was more about when I started traveling, so I have one poem here about Jamaica.
okay.
It's called Landscape One. Small farm, crops growing, the village fed. Ferns growing wild, soon to die of weeds. Small flower pots, enchanting flower makeshift garden. House for warm weather, workmen chipping away tiles laid. Smells of fried fish. Mama's cooking, home style brew. Dog and bird sounds, living in a village, baby asleep. Peas rising up in our garden, pick them in the pod. Clothes on the line, neighbors conversing and stories passed on. Dandelions swaying in the wind, a flower petal picked and blown. Small country road, taxi hailing by, passengers alight. Peas now harvesting, soup for dinner. Chopped firewood, cooking over outside fires, love in action.
Hmm. Makes me want
Yeah,
to think of Jamaica and going there anytime,
yeah.
anytime soon.
So,
Beautiful.
yeah, so I weaved in the fact that, my parents had their small farm, they are growing the crops. We are kids playing outside, we're picking the flowers. My mother loved to plant her flowers and have the garden at the front. And then, there are days when she would get the fish and you have fried fish and she's cooking this on a fire outside. And we're playing and the neighbors are there. We live in the close by. You can see people talking over their fences, things like that.
Hmm.
And this whole thing of this was love in action because she was cooking and taking care of us, and this is what we knew as just love and just being in the countryside and being with nature and seeing people and enjoying life like that. Yeah,
Mm. And it's beautiful. It's really
yeah.
beautiful.
Hmm.
So, have you maybe now, because you talk of love now, the poem is about love, and have you placed the poems in sections? Like there is a section of
Yeah.
love,
So
there
yeah.
are
So I place them
sections
in
of poems.
sections.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah. So I place them in sections. So the first section is encounters with places.
mm-hmm,
And that's where I have the poems about different landscapes, about Japan. If there's one poem about, two poems about being in China. So yeah, so that's landscape one. And the second one is landscape encounters with positive light. So that's where I have the poem about I'm a woman rising. So experiencing different things. Then encounters with love and loss, and that's another section. And then there's encounters with a myriad of feelings, different things, just encounters with different things and how you view it. Yeah.
ah, great. The next question: whom would you want to read this book, The Encounters?
I think I would firstly say I would want people who, especially people who have lived in different places, that when they read it, I think they can really get to the idea. Even if you left your small village in your home country and you went to the city, you can understand this kind of transition. And then if you've left home and you lived in another country, you've lived in different places, I think you can get the idea of or understand. And even for people who haven't done that, I think you still feel the sense of somebody moving through different phases. Yeah.
Mm. I think I can identify with that because I'm personally from Kenya, but I'm
Mm.
currently in Athens, Greece. So
Mm-hmm.
I identify with the poems and the kind of picture you're trying to portray.
Yes. Yeah.
And in your writing, if I can ask this, what was your biggest challenge and in your publishing?
My biggest challenge was actually, I guess, time because I started firstly when we were at home. So February to I think April of 2020, I was at home, and then we had to go back to work. So when we went back to work, I was still in this period of trying to get this book done. And then my publisher, at first, everything was okay in the US. And then suddenly they were also in lockdown. And so all the plans because we wanted to do it in September 2020, and then we had to push it back and then she was saying to me, we really want to do it. We really want to get it done for January 2021. So it took longer than expected because of, I think, the pandemic and lockdowns and different things. Yeah.
Yeah. We are happy that it finally came out,
Yeah.
published.
Yeah.
And we are also happy that we are moving back into normal life, as we would put.
Well, we are still a little bit, not so normal. Well, some days here we are back to lockdown conditions.
Oh, yeah. And I've had that recently. Tell us about that, please, if you would. What's happening?
Well, I live in Hangzhou. That's a city that is in the east and it's close to Shanghai. There have been a couple of cases, I think, of this new variant. I think it's Omicron. And the cases went up. And so they decided that the best way to handle it is to go back to lockdown.
Mm,
So we've had a week and a half where schools were closed. The whole city was back to this kind of lockdown. We were doing tests almost every day. And then we could go outside. Here in my city, we can go outside, but we can't go very far, just around our area where we live.
even
Shanghai is quite,
even as we
yeah,
speak.
Shanghai. Yeah, even as we speak, Shanghai is very different, where Shanghai was totally closed, totally locked, everything shut. But for us, we could move around a bit. But we have to have a green code and have to make sure we do the tests and have the test results. Yeah.
Mm. So maybe I'll put you on the task. What's your perspective? Where are we heading? Are we going to come out really, or are we going to keep on with this cycle again and again?
That's what we have been asking the same questions. I really thought we would be because I remember last year, this time, it seemed as if everything was going well and the rest other countries were struggling, but here it was good. But now it's the reverse happening. So it's very strange. I know for many foreigners here, people would like to go home, even for a visit, even to visit there, because Christmas and summers we were always going home, but now we it's difficult to leave and flights are so expensive. And if you want to keep a job and come back, it's not guaranteed. So yeah, it's
Hmm,
very yeah,
I get it. I get that.
yeah.
You do. And what's in your next work? I mean, there are books that
So
you.
my next work.
Mm,
Okay, so my next, because a lot of people were saying, okay, they don't really like poetry. So poetry is a form that maybe is not accessible to everybody. I try to make my poems really easy to read and like that, not so difficult. But when people hear poetry, they kind of get, yeah. So people are saying, why didn't you write it in nonfiction format, the stories? So now I am writing some of the stories in a nonfiction book. So I'm almost halfway there. So the titles I'm thinking of is um, so my travels, and it's stories from an ESL teacher. So something like that I'm thinking about. So where I'm looking at different phases, stories from Japan, stories from studying in England, stories from China, and making it into a nonfiction book.
Hmm, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yes, people love stories.
Yeah,
Although
people love.
although there is
Yes.
still a big section of people who will enjoy listening to poems. Uh,
Yeah.
and your
Well,
poems,
poems are also stories, but I think that, people just have this view that poetry is a little bit harder to understand. Yeah, maybe.
and your poems, as you say, they are easy to listen
Yes.
to,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
they have a good message. So
Yeah.
I bet that people would still go for encounters
Yeah. Yes.
before your other work comes out. So
Mhm.
we are really happy that you're sharing with us this, and would love to read the book. Where would they get the book? Those people who would be interested to get it.
So the book is on Amazon,
Yep.
and it's on Amazon as an ebook, and
Mm-hmm.
it's also there as paperback. So you can get it on Amazon. It's also on Google Reads, and it's also on Barnes and Noble. But I think Amazon might be the easiest to get it on, more accessible.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
So for those of you who are listening, go to Amazon and search for Encounters by Nadine Thompson.
And they need to put, I guess, Nadine K, because that's the name I wrote it with, Nadine K Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
So that, yeah, because I think my first name and last name, the two names are quite common. So yeah, I put K in there to just, yeah.
Okay, so Nadine K. Thompson.
Yeah.
Go search for that and you'll get it and enjoy the encounters. But before we go, because we are almost done with the show, I always ask our guests to share with us something that we can always remember. A few words. Go for it.
Okay. Well, for my journey and in thinking about it and processing it, I think the best thing I've learned is that we are not as different as we think. When you go to different countries or you see different people, you all think, they're so different. But we are actually not so different. We all want love, we all want acceptance, we all want to be healthy, and we all want to be happy. So I think if we remember that, I think we will treat each other differently. And I think there is too much of looking at just, outer things, but we need to actually receive people by looking at them in a different way, not judging them. So my message is we need to see each other differently. We are not different from each other. We all want the same things. So let's actually try to live with each other and work with each other in a better way.
Thank you very much. That
Thank
has
you.
been Nadine Thompson with
Thank you very much
Encounters, the book.
so much.
Yes, and now we've come to the end of this episode, and we would like to appreciate all the people who have been with us and those who are going to listen to it or watch it later. And I would like to read a comment from one of the listeners who is known as John Kafuenyaga. He says, a love experience is quite conscious to people abroad who usually go some temporary lonely experiences away from home
Mhm.
before
Yeah.
settling again by creating new relationships. And he
Mhm.
says, great poems. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, and we are happy and we've come to the end. Thank you very much, Nadine, for your
Thank
time.
you.
We
Thank
really
you so much. I appreciate it too. Okay. Thank you.
and we wish you all the best in everything that you choose to do.
Okay. And I might be back next time to talk about my next book.
We'll be waiting
Okay.
because we
Thank
love
you.
stories.
You love stories. All right. Well, looking forward to
Okay,
hear your stories too. Okay. All right.
okay,
Bye bye.
bye for now.
Bye for now. Okay. Take
Yeah,
care.
yeah.